1, 2, 3, 4.
You ready to start, Walter?
Yep.
Okay, go.
Welcome to another episode of the Immigrants and Exiles podcast, a chat between me, Walter, and my friend Moreno. Today, we'll be talking about Moreno's second novel, The Immigrants, a story, or rather many stories about lives, loves and lucklessness in one of Victoria's most scenic country spots, but also one of its most secretly intriguing and disturbing areas, where human joy and tragedy take place together. However, we'll also journey to Melbourne and Italy, Tuscany as well. It's an impressive and absorbing ride.
Walter,
Yes, Moreno, how are you doing?
go for it.
Moreno, this is a complex book. What motivated you to come up with a book which is a story but also based on documented facts, and often it has a very polemical and almost angry tone despite the moments of Arcadian beauty. Arcadian, the countryside is lovely. Fishing, walking alone, riding your horse, listening to the birds, the dogs barking, the sunlight, the smell of the grass, the family life. But there's a lot of polemical argument going on in there, which I loved.
Okay. Look, what motivated me to write the book was this feeling I had had for a long time that people came to Australia, emigrated to Australia for a better life. I kept hearing this term. People came here for a better life.
And it appears 100,000 times in the book. A
That's
better life.
A better life, that's right. I tried not to overdo it, but... and then I asked myself, well, what actually happened? And then thinking about it, this has happened over years and years of reflecting on this as I went about my daily business. I realised that I knew a lot of people who had not had what you would call a better life. They came here with all the best intentions: make money, be comfortable, better life for them, for their children, and they got everything but a better life. And I related this to my own family situation. And then I made up a story. I mean, the story, there are only 3 characters in the book that have real names. I used my father's real name for his character, my mother's real name, and I used my own name, very little, that I did a few times here and there. And as I say in my introduction, it's based on what things that really happened, but a lot of it's made up.
Okay,
So you called it a novel.
Yep.
Other people have called, like my first book, it sounded like a memoir. Even this one, when some people who've read it, even at the publishers, they were talking about it as non-fiction.
Because there's a lot of memory.
There certainly is a lot of memory.
I think it's in your intro, if I remember reading in a privileged fashion,
Yes.
the manuscript before the book has even come out yet. You actually raised the issue that in Germany, when the book was floated to other publishers, it was called a work of not fiction, but
non-fiction.
Non-fiction, that's right. It was called non-fiction, and I said maybe it should be called metafiction.
Well,
because of all the documentary evidence that's in there to support maybe the attitude that you've got.
Yeah. Look, it was part of all the thousands of books that go to the book fair. What city is it in Germany?
Was it in Frankfurt?
Frankfurt.
Yeah.
No one was interested. Like the first one, no one took it
That's
up.
okay.
You know?
Great things take a while to simmer and
Of
then come
course.
to boil. But
Of
what I
course.
wanted to say was that you made
Yep.
a good point in the intro
Yep.
that memory
Yep.
is also a fictionalising of the past, even if we don't intend to do that.
I think so.
Because I know from personal experience, when I struggle to see beyond a particular image that
Yep.
I have,
Yep.
see what happened a few minutes before that and after that, I realise I'm just walking in the middle of a darkness.
That's
you know,
right.
I just
Yes.
cannot recall.
Yep.
And I can't
Yep.
even fictionalise it.
Look,
But-
I also make the point that after 50 years, and these things all happened roughly 50 years ago, everything is fiction.
Yeah.
You
of
try and
course.
tell me the story of something that you were involved in 50 years ago, am I going to believe it? I might find it interesting, but will I think it's true? Well, that's another issue.
It's true in the moment, but it's not
Yeah.
true about the past.
Yep. Yep, that's right.
When we walk away from these
Yep.
discussions,
And-
and somebody asks us, how was it?
Sure. Yeah.
We'll have two views.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I mean, you said something about polemic, anger.
Yes.
Yeah, I've always had a chip on my shoulder about this. And this has made me. That's what a chip on the shoulder is. My little bit of anger that I have about people who think migrants come for a better life. They're lucky to be here. They should be glad we let them in. You know, all that type of thing. I remember things. I write about these things. I remember little Italian migrants standing in front of the television cameras with their citizenship certificates on Australia Day after being naturalised. Even the word naturalised gives me the irrits. You know, you're going to be natural now. You're going to be as natural as a natural born citizen, you know, because otherwise you're not. You're not real.
It's like being purified, but not by fire.
Oh,
by
definitely.
certification.
By certification. They give you a certificate, a sprig of wattle, and there you are, you're an Australian now, and you should be happy to be an Australian. And this, even when I was a kid, they used to give me the irrits. I don't want to say shits, because it's not a nice word, but I'll say irrits.
Oh, that's okay.
So that's where my little bit of an anger comes from. And, you know, the more I went along, the more I said, okay, I'm going to push this angle a bit. The overarching voice in the book is going to be of a narrator who is just a little bit, and sometimes more, pissed off with what Australians think of Italians, and by implication, any other person coming from, not from England, not from Britain, you know. So, yeah, so I pushed that and made it quite, I think it's a feature. I tried to make it a feature of the book.
Okay.
Australians, talking about Australians, Walter.
Yep. Oh,
Okay.
I'm listening. I'm mesmerised by the fire in your eyes already.
Get out. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Now listen,
Yeah.
talking about the distinction between Australians,
Yep.
Anglo-Australians,
Yeah.
Scottish, Irish and all of that,
Yeah.
which is really unfair to bung everyone in together.
Of course.
And us migrants
Yeah. Yep.
from different areas.
Yeah.
Is this one of the reasons why
Yeah.
you referred to real places, but then you also dressed them up in a mythological kind of set of names that Australians of Anglo background, English speakers, would go, huh, what's he referring to?
Yeah.
Because when I was reading it, I thought, it's like a personal or cultural, the ghetto language of a psychological dialect, right?
Yes.
Where a place called Wangaratta
Yep.
is no longer called Wangaratta.
Yep.
It's called Wangaratta
Yes, right.
or something like that.
Yes. Yes.
Is that why you sort of inserted these non-actual names?
Well, these are the names, and I'm thinking of two in particular. I mean, there's Mitrefo.
Yeah.
Okay, Mitrefo. This is what my parents used to say. They said Mitrefo.
Yeah.
And Buffalo River. Buffalo River. It's one word. It's spelt the way you say it. Buffalo River. People reading it, particularly who are familiar with that district in northeast Victoria, might think, oh, this is such and such a place. There's a real place, and all he's done is change the name.
No.
I haven't just changed the
No,
name.
it's more than that.
I've tried to create a place that is like mythical for me. It was mythical even for the boy who inhabits these places. At the time he inhabited them, and 50 years later when he grew up and wrote the book. So these places are made up, and they're made up. I think sometimes it's a way of owning them, of taking them into my family's domain and making them ours. Because otherwise, we're never going to be a part of the real place. Well, I didn't think I was anyway. My mother and father, they struggled to fit in, and to some extent they did in the end, but only I always felt after they had given up. First of all, they had to give up, and then they could fit in. So this also happens with place names in inner city Melbourne, where we lived, like Scotchima Street.
Oh, yes.
And places like that. Nicholson Street.
I remember Nicholson.
There you go. Brunswick. I mean, now, if you tell me it sounds like Franco Cozzo, I'm going to get pissed off.
No.
These were genuine pronunciations by my parents of place names.
Okay, so they're apparently fictionalised or mythologized, but they're not in reality.
No.
They just introduce a different set of facts
Yes.
that are not known to the majority of people.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
Now, moving on to so many things to discuss in this book, real names that appear, you mentioned your dad, your mum and yourself.
Yep.
Are these the names of people who don't need protection for one reason or another? And to me, they're heroes, right?
Yep.
They're the heroes, the protagonists, the heroes. I wanted to ask you to start off with using one of them as the key into the lives of all of them, your mother.
Yep.
She is such a prominent and powerful figure with all her fallibilities, and worries.
Well, it's the character based on my mother.
Yeah, it's the character based on your mother.
Oh, okay. Yep.
What is the attraction to having, even if it's a character, the female character so strong?
Yes. First of all, it's a very simple thing. I love Italian words and names. Let's talk about Italian names. The name Morena. I think it's a beautiful name.
It's a nice name.
It's a beautiful name.
Morena.
And obviously my mum, she must have been a little bit of a narcissist because she called me Moreno, right?
She wanted to possess you entirely.
Well, I was hers.
Yeah.
I was her little boy. Morena. I also, and the same with Ugo. I mean, I had for a long, long time, until I was, well into mature adulthood, I had trouble thinking of Ugo as the name of a little boy. Because this is my father. Yeah. I was always little and he was big and mature and grown up. But eventually I did. I was able to write about Ugo as a little boy in my first book. But I loved Ugo. Now, both those names, in order to write this particular book, I had to feel emotionally involved. And one way I had of doing that was to use these two real names. The very sound of the word Ugo, the name Ugo, and Morena as well, they were part of the driving emotion that allowed me to write the book. I couldn't have called the character something else and written this book. I couldn't have done it. So it was part of my process. Yeah. That's what they say, right? There's a process. That was part of my process. I didn't want to use Moreno an awful lot. I did, in the end, use it a little bit here and there. I don't even know why, probably, because sometimes it's just easier to use a name than to use, if you've got too many he's in a paragraph, you don't know who's doing what.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So when I got stuck, I used my name here and there, but rarely.
Yeah,
And there was one other name that I actually used, which was my brother's name, Nicholas.
Nicholas, that's right.
And I mentioned that twice, I think, once or twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but mainly it was the emotional, to tap into the emotional aspect of the content of the book.
Yeah, names a bit like smells, odours.
Oh, definitely.
Are trigger mechanisms for.
You've got it, haven't you?
Yeah.
You really have.
Yeah.
You really read this book.
Oh,
Absolutely. I can see your notes.
I called it absorbing and intriguing because it's the kind of
Hang on,
lovely
Walter,
Belgian
Juliet
girl
is here.
now.
Come here, Juliet.
Is here.
Sorry, I didn't want to butter.
No, that's okay. You want us to order something?
If
I'll
you
have
like
porridge.
porridge?
I'll have porridge.
Anything for you?
Io non mangio niente, grazie.
Perfetto. Va
Mangio,
bene,
mangio
grazie
solo
mille.
io.
Grazie.
Grazie, ciao. Yeah, that was Juliet, our Belgian, French-speaking Belgian waitress
Absolutely
today.
gorgeous. I know it's recorded. I want it down for posterity.
And now a musical interlude, which is a song called Life Is by Walter. The rest of the song will be played at the end of the podcast. It's worth having a listen to.
Writing a song is like righting a wrong, escaping the hand of the deadliest tongue. Like Hong Kong, who lives long? No one is that strong. Walking so fast in a city that crawls, the river's so cold it won't let you talk. So run by degrees, but really, it's no fun if you please.
So the names.
Lost in a song.
I think the point of the authenticity of the emotion, of its intensity,
Yep.
has to come back to the fact
Yep.
of what they endured,
Yes.
which brings us on to the topic of emigration.
Yes.
So, you said coming...
Could I just say something just before we go
yes,
on to
please.
that? And the question in terms of names, I think there will be a lot of people who read this book who will think about the names of their parents, their grandparents, their uncles and aunts here in Australia, and will love them all over again.
Yeah.
We'll see them, we'll remember them just on the strength of the names.
Yeah.
Because names are something you can revere, almost.
Yeah.
You know, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, yeah, go on.
Yes, they're as biblical as Rachel and
Definitely.
Jacob,
Yeah. Think of your own parents' names, you know?
Alessandro, and I think of them in their original version, so not
Yes.
Alex like
Of
it was
course.
called here,
Yeah.
or even for myself,
Yeah.
you know, not
Yeah.
Walter,
Yeah.
or Wally, or
Yeah.
Walt. It's Walter.
That's right.
Walter.
I know. I mean, I can't think of I cringe when I think of my dad's name the way Australians pronounced it.
Hugo.
Hugo.
No, please, you
You
go.
go. No, you
no,
go.
You go. No,
You
please.
go. Oh, you know.
Go.
Anyway.
So their purpose was to emigrate. I was saying, people escaping something and looking for improvement.
Yeah.
Right. But you made this really interesting point in the book, and I unfortunately don't have the book because it doesn't exist in book form.
No.
So I can't open it up to the page. But you say that the soul in emigrating is left hungry.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
This expression, it really stuck out. Yeah, it stuck into me. And my soul was left hungry as well when I read that.
Yep.
I wanted to know more about these two characters, even though I knew them personally.
Yep.
What does the soul stand for that suffers so much in this?
Okay.
In
Well,
these stories.
I can remember what I was thinking at the time when I wrote these few words. It's that, you know, when you think about emigrating, coming to a place like Australia, what do? You work, you get up in the morning, go to work, you come home, or you go out into the paddock and work. and you have your meals. You might have a family, so you sit down and eat with your family. You talk to your children, your husband, wife. You might or might not have friends that you visit and they visit you. But what about, I was thinking of something fairly abstract, which is just being in a place. Being in a place and what it means just to be there, to be surrounded. It's like as if in the atmosphere are the ghosts of all your ancestors, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, the people who first came to the village that you were born in, the people who lived in the houses next to you before the current people did, the little lanes and pathways and stone steps everywhere. Yeah. There's all this kind of miasma of being. You can't replicate that in a new place that you go to.
That's right.
It just doesn't exist.
So this is history, this is antecedents.
All of that.
It's genetics.
Yes.
Because now that makes sense the way you're describing it. Because the soul is not just, actually it's not at all a time and a place.
Yep.
That's materialism. Right?
Yes, yes.
The soul is now something eternal. And
yes.
Even if we go back 1,000 years, that's still limited to 1,000 years.
Yep.
Grazie.
Yep.
But the soul is eternal. So, but 1,000 years is kind of an eternity for us as human beings.
Of course. Of course.
And it might go back. I can trace ancestors in the Friuli region back 1,000 years, but not much further than that.
Yep.
So now I understand.
And look, I'm probably just going to repeat the same thing in another way, but I was trying to imagine myself in that village that I was born in. And you might be able to do this with Rome, or even if you try to imagine the place where your dad was born in Alexandria.
Yeah.
You close your eyes and you try to imagine what is around you. You know, when I tried to do that, when I did that with the village, closed my eyes, tried to remember the times that I was there, then if I did that with, say, Buffalo River, I had a tiny glimpse of the same thing at Buffalo River. It was a tiny thing, and it was only when I was little. It was only when I was a 10-year-old boy that experience, that I had that experience of belonging to a place. And then it vanished. But when I think about Sangiovese even now, it's still there in my mind and in my heart, Walter. You know, heart is an embarrassing word for a grown man to use, but that's how I feel. You know, and that's what I mean about, you know, and you can't, that hunger that you might have for that sense of belonging, you're not going to get it here. The soul is not going to be satisfied. You know, it's not going to be fed.
Well, I think that's in a way the point that a lot of humanitarianly minded Australians try to make about why we should have voted yes in the voice to Parliament.
Yes.
Because our soul is not Europe, or it's not Asia, or it's not the Americas, it's Australia, but we're disconnected from our soul, which is the soul of the Aborigine and First Nations people. You know.
That's an excellent point.
And until we really connect up with them, we can't sort of vicariously inherit something of their connection to the land.
Yeah. We're ignoring, it would be like me trying to ignore the DNA of Sangiovese, okay?
Yeah.
That's in me.
Yeah.
That DNA element.
Now, there's a lot of passion in what you've been saying.
Yeah.
And going back to the differences between Italian migrants and generational Australians who are no longer migrants, they're the super culture. In the chapter Mon Buffalo, especially, that tone of anger slips almost into what I noted down as a kind of reverse racism. How do you think Australian readers that is non-Italians, a lot of Italians will go, oh yeah, I relate to this. But how do you think that Australian readers, since it's appearing not in Italian but in Australian English, how are they going to do, the burning of the book?
Well,
which would be good. Even bad publicity is good
yeah. Okay, I mean,
or you don't care.
I wanted to make the point. I wanted to stir people up if I could. I mean, it would be flattering to think that it will stir people up. There are awful things that have happened to migrants in Australia, and other people have written about them, and probably better than I have. But you don't normally associate Italians anymore with being picked on. But Italians were picked on. Italians were murdered. There's a murder in or near that part of the book, and a terrible desecration, you could say, of the corpse.
Oh yes.
And it's based on something that really happened, but I've changed everything about it. I've changed names, I've changed time frame, I've changed the place that the murder victim came from, that the murderer came from. It's all hidden away. I don't want to invade people's privacy, even though it's, what are we looking at? We're talking 50 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, Mont Buffalo, at one point in its history, was the equivalent, it seemed to me, of the mountains in under the Raj, where people took refuge from the heat in India. The well-off members of British society, probably all well-off, went to the mountains to escape the heat. And Mont Buffalo was a place a bit like that. The chalet still exists.
Yep.
It's still up there.
Yep.
There's talk even now of renovating it or doing something with it. But it's also the place where a murderer sat on the cliff top just out the front of the chalet at the lookout and contemplated throwing himself off because he'd just murdered somebody just a few hours before. And people don't think about this. They would have heard the story, but I was surprised when I heard the story of this particular murder, how it just seemed that it was forgotten. I thought, it's not fair that this thing is forgotten, particularly since the murder was prompted by some weird prejudice about Italian men, and I won't give it away now. People can read about this and think, oh yeah, this is another bit of prejudice about Italians. They eat spaghetti, and they also have this other particular feature, And it's just a chip on my shoulder.
Yes, I can't say anything more about it either.
No, you can't.
Revealing things.
Let's not do that. No.
But it's still, it's more than a chip on your shoulder. I think what you're articulating is that the book, just for those who are of non-Italian background, who will be listening to this at some point in the future, it's not a revenge story. You're angry, so you're going to tell it from your point of view. It's really about validating as much of the past in its totality as you can about a particular area, about a set of people, and how they see others, not just the others, how they see that set of people.
Yes.
It's about not forgetting, which we do rather easily as we move on through life. And we think about the future rather than the past.
Your parents, sorry, go on.
And it's speaking truth to power. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Because history, talking about indirectly about memory again, is inevitably a form of revisionism, because we're not living that thing that we called history.
Yep.
And it's the same thing here. That when you can't revisit the past in an actual sense. So you do what you can to try and understand it. But when you try to avoid even trying to understand it, and you just selectively pick the bits that you like to fashion a falsehood of how it was, so that even for people like me who studied a bit of Australian history, I'd never heard of Aboriginal wars. It's dream time. It's
Yep.
all these lovely brown-coloured people walking around, half naked and enjoying the sun and welcoming these new arrivals.
Yep.
Rather innocent. And they weren't like that at all. They
You
were-
know, I don't know if you've ever thought of this, but people like your parents
Yeah.
and my parents were called Mediterranean scum at one stage. So, when I realised this, when I found out about this, I thought, oh my God, my mother, my father, our family friends, they were Mediterranean scum, were they? And people have forgotten this. People have forgotten this. We're now using terms like that about people from certain parts of Africa. But it just goes on and on and on. It never ends.
Peter Dutton telling us from Queensland
That's
that,
right.
that we're all hiding down here in Victoria because
Yeah.
of Sudanese gangs.
We're afraid to go
frightening
out to
us.
restaurants. That's
Yeah.
right. I know. And it's coming. I mean, we've got an election campaign coming soon.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
So remember that. Remember the Mediterranean scum.
Dutton is nuking us, but
Yes.
telling us it's good for us.
That's
Nuclear
right.
power is good for us.
Yes.
Weaponising, as they say.
Yep.
No, I think it's fantastic the way the book depends on actual evidence.
Lost in a song is you smoking a bong. Your secret's going south along Clarendon. Thinking party pies under a bridge of sighs. Imagine a freeway to the lake. Down by the water, a lullaby caught you in the shape of a swan. You could almost hold on, but no crumbs still.